Welcome, everyone, to today's opening program for this groundbreaking exhibition, Betty Cooke, The Circle, and the Line. I'm Julia Marchari-Alexander, the Walters Andrea B. and John H. Laporte Director. Today's program, the first on-site program in over 18 months, is a panel discussion that explores and celebrates Betty's career and legacy. Although we wish we could have packed the house, which I am sure we would have done, we did decide that because of COVID, we needed to limit the number of seats. And I wanted to make sure that we did so to ensure the health and safety of all of you and our staff. In alignment with our college and university colleagues, we are also requiring that not just you, but also all of our speakers today continue to wear their masks throughout. We have worked out our sound to maximize the ability for you to hear our presenters, but we are really grateful to all of you for bearing with us and for your patience as we observe these COVID protocols and guidelines. We are honored to have Betty Cooke here with us today, and I want to extend a huge debt of gratitude to you, Betty, for your work, for your partnership, for your mentorship, for your creativity, and for your grace in getting us here today. Most of all, thank you for a lifetime of joy and wonder as we all have your work in our lives. And as you remind me every time we walk through the exhibition, but wait, there's more to come. So, huge thanks also go to all of you, our supporters and our sponsors, many of whom are here with us today. In particular, we are grateful to PNC, to the Walters Women's Committee Legacy Fund, the Lenore G. Tawney Foundation, the Hildy Voss Eliasberg Fund for Exhibitions, Joni and Bob Ottenritter, Judy and Peter Van Dyke, Harvey and Joyce Noyes, all of you who have supported this project and the Walters in so many ways. At this time, I would like to introduce MICA's president, Sammy Hoy, who has in his time here become one of Baltimore's celebrities and what I call one of this city's one-name people, Sammy.
Many thanks to Julia and also to the Walters Art Museum team for this landmark exhibition that provides such a fantastic showcase for Betty Cooke, whose iconic design has touched our lives for over 70 years. It is so fitting that the first comprehensive museum retrospective for this Baltimore treasure should take place in her home city and our own very own Walters Art Museum. So I'm tremendously honored to be here as President MICA in celebration and recognition of our beloved and renowned alumna, Betty Cooke. But I must add that I'm also deeply touched by the occasion because you see, for the world, Betty is a trailblazing artist and designer, a creative entrepreneur par excellence, and an educator who's dedicated to nurturing the next generations of talent. But for us at MICA, she is family. There's a lot of history and a lot of love between MICA with both Betty and her late husband, Bill Steinmetz. Betty, I stand here to represent the love and pride and congratulations from your MICA family, and this audience here makes clear there are many out there who adore you as well. As Julia mentioned, Betty is among the world's foremost jewelry designer. Her unique vision and sublime purity of her art constitute an inimitable voice within the history of American modernist design and the decorative arts movement. For those in the audience who may not know Betty's personal and professional trajectory, allow me to provide just a few highlights. Betty graduated from MICA and then became a revered faculty member during and after World War II. Some of her students actually are here in the audience. She taught for 22 years while she was establishing her art and design career. At MICA, she met, fell in love with, and married fellow student and professor and later MICA trustee, Bill Steinmetz. Betty and Bill were life and business partners. As someone said today earlier at a brunch event, they were the coolest couple in town. And in 1955, this coolest couple in town opened a design shop and studio in Mount Vernon. And then in 1965, they launched the Store Ltd, the legendary and still running and still operating design store that you cannot go in without spending money, that carries work by Betty and other artistic creators. Today, Betty's work can be found in numerous personal collections. I look at the audience. There's an exhibition on the wall next door, and there is a walking exhibition actually over here. Betty's art is the living art. And it also can be found in major museums, such as the Museum in Fine Arts Boston, to the Museum of Art and Design New York, and many, many others. Over their 60-plus years of partnership, Betty and Bill have also supported generations of creative talents through MICA student scholarship and facilities development. Most recently, Betty established the William O. Steinmetz and Betty Cooke Chair in Design, currently held by Alan Lupton, who's on stage and who you hear on the panel today. Betty's brilliance and generosity have been a living legacy that has inspired many at MICA and beyond. And now, this retrospective exhibition and its publication, thanks to the Walters Art Museum, will document Betty's life and art for prosperity and further share her artistic voice. The Circle and Line explores Betty's jewelry and design practice, as well as many sources of inspiration, from her earliest work from the 1940s to her current creation. She is a force of nature, and she has not stopped creating. I think, as Julia mentioned, she said there's more where this is coming from. Her distinctive style embodies the tenets of good and timeless design. Less is more, and it's really classic. It's astounding how the early work still holds up today and points to the future. Her interest in using kinetic forms with natural inspirations has been praised for over 7 decades. Many people call Betty's design jewelry, but it is truly wearable sculpture in motion. It's one-of-a-kind vision by a one-of-a-kind talent and human being, and it so belongs in the museum, and I think the Walter has done a remarkable job making that abundantly clear to any visitors. So let me conclude by expressing my gratitude to Betty for her art and to the Walter Arts Museum for this exhibition that brings, as Julia says, such joy, harmony, hope, and light as we navigate our very strange and confounding times. We may feel weighed down by the worries of the world right now, but you show us the power of art and design by giving us the most wonderful lift. And Betty, for over 7 decades, you have given us that lift on, and still providing that going forward. So it's my distinct pleasure and honor to introduce Betty Cooke in the audience, who will come on the stage later on. But please join me in applauding our beloved star on the opening day of the first museum retrospective. And now I'll turn the podium back to Julia, who will introduce the distinguished panel.
Thank you, Sammy. On to today's show. The panel is moderated by Jo Briggs, who's here in front of me. She has served as this show's in-house organizing curator since the departure of our former Deputy Director of Art and Program, Eleanor Hughes, who led the publication and also the early formation of this show. Jo has an endowed curatorship here at the museum. She is the Jennie Walters Delano Curator of 18th and 19th century art. She came to the Walters a decade ago with all sorts of degrees from the Courtauld to Oxford to Yale University, where I met her as she was finishing her PhD as a postdoctoral research associate at the Yale Center for British Art. So please join me in welcoming Jo, who will moderate today's panel and who is also now a specialist in Betty Cooke jewelry / wearable sculpture.
Well, thank you so much, Julia, for that wonderful introduction. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the wonderfully warm feelings that I can sense around the auditorium. Your masks, you're all smiling, and it's just wonderful to see everybody here. So I think my job today as moderator is going to be an extremely easy one because we have an amazing panel here. And I'm going to introduce them to you from left to right of the stage. Jeannine Falino is curator of Betty Cooke, The Circle and the Line. and author of the accompanying publication, and she has been a wonderful colleague all through this process. Jeannine previously worked at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, and she's curated numerous exhibitions covering the decorative arts and design. To give just a few highlights, in 2011, she produced the major survey, Crafting Modernism, Mid-Century American Art and Design at the Museum of Art and Design in New York. In 2017, her exhibition, New York Silver, Then and Now, brought contemporary artists and designers into dialogue with historic silver. She is also the author of Silver of the Americas, 1600 to 2000. So welcome, Jeannine. And next we have Ellen Lupton. Very appropriately, she is the Betty Cooke and William O. Steinmetz Design Chair at MICA. Ellen has authored numerous books on design processes, including Thinking with Type and Graphic Design Thinking. She is the co-author of Graphic Design, The New Basics, and Extra Bold, and she's also the senior curator of contemporary design at the Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Design Museum in New York. Her recent exhibitions have included The Senses, Design Beyond Vision, How Posters Work, and Beautiful Users. She's a fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and in 2007 received the American Institute of Graphic Arts Gold Medal for Lifetime Achievement. So welcome, Ellen. And last, but by no means least, Fred Lazarus served as the president of MICA from 1978 to 2014, and he is now president emeritus. Before coming to MICA, he was staff assistant to the chairman of the National Endowment for the Arts, president of the Washington Council for Equal Business Opportunity, and a staff associate for the National Council for Equal Business Opportunity. He currently serves as chair of the board of the Baltimore Design School and is a board member of Arts Every Day and the Central Baltimore Partnership, where he was founding chair. Among other awards, he has received the Baltimore City Mayor's Arts Award, the Howard County Arts Award, and the National Art Education Association's Distinguished Service Award. So welcome to Fred as well. So I want to start with what I hope is a kind of easy icebreaker question, which is to ask the panelists how they first were introduced to Betty and came across her work. And I'm going to start with Jeannine, I think, and we'll work towards me.
Very good, and thank you, Jo, for the introduction. Well, Betty and I go back, not as far back as some of you here, I imagine, to about 2007, when I was in New York. I was working on Crafting Modernism, the exhibition at the Museum of Arts and Design that Jo referred to, and I was chasing down all of these fantastic mid-century artists traveling around the country. And that brought me to Betty and Bill, and they actually brought out all of Betty's wonderful vintage pieces for me to study, and we became friends then. And then later on, I was involved with Betty in helping to place her works to museums around the country and elsewhere, and that is a process that continues today. But in that process, we approached the Walters, and our wonderful director here, Julia, said, Betty Cooke? Well, I have some other ideas. And so that's how the exhibition was born. So it's been really a pleasure to be a part of all of this and to be a conduit or an agent just to help to present all of Betty's achievements for Baltimore and beyond.
I came back to Baltimore in 1997 to teach at MICA in our amazing design program. and had known of Betty as a young person who had grown up in Baltimore, and she's this sort of distant figure. You come to MICA, and Betty is not distant. Betty is present in the stones, in the glass, in the air, and it became immediately evident to me that to learn to know her work, to meet her, to start to wear her, and to make her part of my life was really essential. And for me, what Betty represents is the merging of art and design into something that we can use, something that illuminates our daily life. And a great woman entrepreneur who was always involved in the creativity of the work, but also how to show it to people, how to invite people into the story of the work and experience it. And that is an amazing lesson for all of our students to absorb that.
Yeah, I think that's really wonderful. Yeah, and the idea that you're bringing people in, Betty, that the store is a place where people can come and experience all of this firsthand. You don't need an entry ticket. It's very open. And so, Fred, can I turn to you now?
I think that, well, Betty and Bill were amongst the first people I met in Baltimore. Actually, I met them when I was interviewing for my job at MICA. And needless to say, Betty's and Bill's involvement in the college from the very time that I arrived all the way through my tenure never ceased. And also, I want to just comment on another aspect of Betty and Bill, and that's their role in the Baltimore arts community and design community. There was never an exhibition opening that I went to in Baltimore where Betty and Bill were not there. There was never an exhibition at MICA where they were not at the opening. They were always so supportive of all their colleagues in the art world. And they did it because they believed it was important to show up and to be able to let people know that they cared. And God knows they cared. And Betty, the city is so grateful to you and Bill for what you have done and your presence and your support over so many years. And I could go on forever about specific things that you did as well in this town, going way back even before I arrived. So thank you.
Yeah, it's really tremendous, and Fred, you're probably the best person to judge Betty's legacy, and we're here to celebrate that legacy, ongoing legacy today. I wonder if I can ask a few more pointed questions to our panelists. Ellen, you wrote a wonderful essay for our catalog, which just has so many different aspects to it, talking about the way that jewelry is a gentle form of bondage. I love that quote. And doing some wonderful work comparing jewelry to typography. But the quote that we've used in the exhibition is, "Each piece is a profound lesson in how to see." And I wonder if I could ask you to expand a little bit on that.
Sure.
And maybe I can bring up some examples.
Maybe
of Betty's
the
work.
ring, the gold ring with the diamond. Could you bring that up?
Sure, yeah.
I think it's called the two. Oh my goodness.
There it is.
So I think we all have a picture in our mind of what a diamond ring looks like. And perhaps someone kneels before you and offers you a life in bondage if you accept that diamond ring. None of our minds have this ring, right? Because this ring looks like a piece of plumbing that's been cut in half and speared with a gold tube, and there, balanced on the end, is this diamond rock, right? It's a rock, it's elemental. And I look at that, and this to me is the essence of what jewelry design as sculpture, as invention, as creating a new sentence in the language of how things are put together, right? And it takes something that we think we know and says it in a new way. And it's just, when I look at these things and the 249 other things like that in the exhibition, each one is a new way to put things together with jewelry, which we all think we know what it is. It's a bracelet, it's a necklace, it's a pin, until Betty makes it something different.
Yeah, absolutely. And yet it's never off-putting. I think it's always incredibly approachable and just beautiful as well. And such a variety of objects upstairs in the exhibition, you know, a testament to 70 years of creating. And I'm looking forward to everyone's reaction when they go and have a look at the exhibition. And I wonder if I might ask Jeannine a pointed question as well. So we have had some press tours, and we have been asked several times, how did you select the works in the exhibition? You know, how did you narrow it down? What was the story you wanted to tell? So maybe you could speak to that a little bit for us.
Well, seeking out objects for this exhibition was especially difficult because Betty has legions of admirers who have great stores of her jewelry accumulated over decades. And I had the privilege to accompany her to visit many of these collectors. And seeing them all is really quite an experience because they're arrayed before you can be the jewelry of 30, 40, 50, as you say, 7 decades of work. And it is difficult to pare that down. It's one of the hardest things a curator has to do in every instance. But with Betty and her immense productivity and her amazing variety and her travels around the sun with this circle and this line and other elementary geometric forms, you realize the elasticity of these shapes if you have the right person behind them. So that doesn't make the curator's work any easier. But we try to think of it in terms of the historical arc and also the themes that might show up within that. So we have a section, for instance, on her earlier works having to do with nature and animals. But as with all of the sections, as you'll see as you go through the show, not a single case practically does not show her work from the beginning to the end. So whether it's stars, whether it's circles, whether it's her gesture, neck pieces, she's continually returning to her core, her concepts of good design, and always returning to that with a fresh eye. And so each of the sections really shows her experience and her dexterity and her irrepressible desire to create something new. But we hope within each of those sections you get a taste of that range and that mind at work.
Thank you. Yeah, that's wonderful. And if I might make my last pointed question to Fred, you already addressed this a little bit, talking about Betty always making sure she comes to openings in Baltimore. But I wondered if you could talk a little bit, especially in your role as the chair of the Baltimore Design School, how have you seen Baltimore change in the time you've been here? And where might you situate Betty or jewelry perhaps more broadly within that?
Well, in many respects, it's changed a lot, and for some of us, it's not changed near enough. I think that it's incredible to me to think back to the 40s when Betty started with her place and created this. This was before she even met Bill, all by herself as a woman, as an entrepreneur, as an artist. And and I also, as I look at the show and the collections, and I think of the people who patronized her work, who recognized her work, who saw the importance of it, the fact that they would go to this little place on Reed Street and they would find this wonderful work and recognize it, whether it was Howard Head or whether it was Jim Rouse or whether it was Sadie Mae or whoever it was that found this. And these were icons in Baltimore, and they found it. Now, they were luckily, I think in most cases, eccentric enough individuals that they could appreciate this, and they were outside the mold of Baltimore from the beginning in many cases, and they were leading forces in Baltimore. But, I mean, we have come a long way, and I think there's no question that there's a great deal more support for the kinds of things that Betty does, and certainly all you have to do is look around this room and everybody has Betty's work. I don't know how many of our counterparts in 1947 would want to be wearing these necklaces. And so I think it's a great tribute to Betty to have persevered in this way, and luckily people who loved her work stayed with her and found it in those early days. But it's the city still maybe has a long way to go in the design sense. I think all of us could think of lots of examples, but it's a much easier place to be than when Betty started, and the fact that she was able to do this when she did is an amazing tribute to her and her determination, her perseverance, and her guts.
And that leads me very nicely into the next question, which I hope is not too esoteric or vague, but I wondered if you could all think about what is it precisely that you think makes Betty's jewelry so different, but also gives it that longevity that you mentioned, that something from the 40s can still look so fresh and contemporary.
Maybe we could look at another beautiful piece and just explore it together. The bicentennial neck piece. So before she shows it, imagine in your head a necklace based on the American flag, right? And this is even worse than the engagement ring in terms of what comes into your mind. And then here's this necklace with like, wow, that's an interpretation of the flag. So you have the hanging stripes, and then dangling from the short stripes are the stars, and they are assembled around this line, which is, the brilliant title for your show, The Circle and the Line, right? How many different ways are there to make a line with metal? And so this is a curved line. It's a circle, but it's made up of straight lines. And it is just such a beautiful piece of graphic design. Sorry, Betty, I see graphic design everywhere. But to talk about lessons in seeing and how we can look at each of Betty's pieces and see a drawing lesson, a lesson in how to reinterpret an icon, a lesson in how to turn metal into something that moves and sparkles, that hangs in a new direction. To me, that's the essence of what her work is all about.
That's a wonderful assessment. Jeannine, can I ask you to weigh in?
Oh dear, so many superlatives, hard to know where to begin. I've always been deeply impressed by the way Betty had the spunk and the attitude to just get started right out of college, right out of MICA's, purchase that house on Tyson Street and get on with the business. And to sell her work and to show her work nationally, it shows great self-confidence, belief in what was possible, belief in oneself. And for that reason, as a woman, Betty's often ranked with people like designers like Florence Knoll, for instance, or Eva Zeisel. And, great women, great designers. But beyond that, I really think that she should be judged on the basis of the art. I mean, people talk about her as a great female pioneer, and I wouldn't want to change that for all the tea in China. But she creates great art for the body, sculpture to wear, and she has few peers.
I think one of the things that's impressed me from the beginning, and I think it's so reinforced by this beautiful show, is both the continuity and the evolution of the work. You see elements in the very early work that go all the way through it, and I must say that over the years I've worked with lots of faculty, lots of artists and what have you, and most artists feel this need to kind of reinvent themselves and do something every period of time to keep proving the fact that they are at the forefront. Betty was able to do that through evolution, not through revolution, and just to keep the design evolving and moving forward in a way that the new work is not the old work, but you can see it all the way through it. And I just think that that's an amazing lifetime of an achievement for any artist, and particularly for the way Betty's done it. And I think, again, going back to Ellen's point, none of this would be what you would think of as jewelry. It is worn sculpture, and it is amazing to see how she has taken something that we might call jewelry and taken it to a different level, and that yet so many people relate to it and feel comfortable with it. So thank you.
You know it's Betty's work. It's instantly recognizable, but there are still these really interesting evolutions where we go from the silver at the beginning through to using gold. And if you like opals, then there's a lot of beautiful things to see in this show. And then finally, we end with some of the commission pieces, which have these kind of secret messages in them. So although they're very abstracted, there is this wonderful sense of telling a story through these pieces. I want to just go back a little bit, if I can bring this up, because I think the interesting question is about the relationship between jewelry and the body. And this is another place where maybe we've seen a little bit of an evolution within the show, because there's a moment when Betty starts to play with these kind of tubes that are threaded onto a wire, and then they can be kind of draped around the body. And I know that in the video upstairs, you were both talking about asymmetry in the body and how Betty's work often is asymmetrical and even slightly challenging to the wearer. So I wonder, here it is. Here's Betty showing how it's done. So I wonder if we might talk a little bit about, the relationship between the jewelry and the body and the wearer.
Well, it's wonderful that Betty's here and wearing her own jewelry in a unique way today, so be sure to check it out, how she's wearing it. I never have the courage to do that myself. Yeah, so the body, the human body, we think of as being symmetrical, and in some ways it is, but in other ways it isn't. Our internal organs are all organized quite loosely in there with different weights and counterweights and so forth. And I think Betty captures that in her work. And a story that she told to me and Fred was wearing one of her jewelry pieces. I think she was at an airport or a restaurant or something. And somebody comes up to her and tries to straighten it out. Right? Like, I think your necklace is broken, miss. Because it had these hanging pieces on it. And so she's challenging us to look at the body differently and perhaps look inside where things aren't so neatly organized.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And just to tell a little story, when we were going through the exhibition with Betty, we mentioned one of the neck pieces which has these kind of spikes coming down from it. And we said, Betty, well, how wouldn't that be a little dangerous with these spikes? And Betty just said, well, you just have to stand up straight.
Exactly.
But Jeannine, I don't know if you want to add to that at all about the symmetry, the asymmetry, the body.
Well, I do know that Betty is the best advertisement for her own work. She is a style guru, as Nancy Rome says in the catalog, and I think that quotation is on the walls. Betty knows how to wear the pieces that she makes, and she is the best possible model for them. And for me, it's really also this knowledge that she respects the body. She wants the wearer to enjoy the work. You can wear them like a scarf. They move with you. They're comfortable. And because of that, people just continue to wear them. And it's true that in our world, a lot of jewelers are interested in telegraphing how fabulous they are and making things that are sometimes very difficult to wear. But that's the opposite of what Betty does. She's really always thinking about the wearer. That's first. And it's meant to move and be comfortable and telegraph that, you've got other things on your mind. You're thinking about looking like a woman who's sophisticated, traveling, movement, and in the world. And you can take those pieces with you and go anywhere.
Yeah, that's very well put, and we talked about how it's almost like a membership badge to a very wonderful club to wear Betty's pieces. And I wanted to just go forward to look at something that really spoke to me. My job here is to look after the 18th and 19th century collections at the Walters, but there are aspects of Betty's jewelry which I think of as just incredibly timeless. This piece here on screen, which has a pebble combined with a diamond, which is just this wonderful juxtaposition, really reminded me of some of the Lalique pieces that we have in our collection, where he juxtaposes ivory with diamonds in a subordinate role. And I also wanted to, if I can, bring up some more pieces that really speak to the idea of conveying secret messages in jewelry. Because that's something that I think of as, you think about jewelry in the past, whether it's something that's monogrammed or a portrait miniature that is worn that conveys this kind of a message about memory or about personal associations. And these are two wonderful pieces where they need to be explained a little bit perhaps, but it's a 68. So you see that this necklace forms a 6 and an 8, and then the brooch here is a 6 and a 5. And so even though these are very abstracted, they really talk to a very specific moment marking time in somebody's life. And so I wondered if we might end up by talking about Betty's work in the context of the Walters, because one of the really fun things we did in this show was have Betty pick out objects that she remembered from her Walters visits. And this includes a beautiful Etruscan mirror and a gauntlet, but also something from my collection area, which is this 19th century painting by Corot. And we pair it with Betty's branching necklaces. So I wonder if I could, this is maybe not such a statement more than a question, but just reflecting on the role of museums and the past in creating something new.
Happy to discuss this. Museums have been a continual source of inspiration. And I've dealt with many artists over the years who have mentioned these things. But what's been so extraordinary about this collaboration with the Walters is that we have an artist who has direct memories of particular objects that she enjoyed as a child. The Walters opened its doors in 1934, and Betty was a 10-year-old, and she was visiting here, and objects were passing through her mind and lodging in her memory, and add that to the studies she was making in nature, and the result are the things that you see here. So it's been a terrific opportunity to really think about how an artist sees in a museum the things that catch their eye, and the wonderful reverberations, the resonance of that kind of experience in the decades that follow.
Yeah, please go ahead.
A perspective I think is really interesting about the three objects that are here, but is what Betty sees in the work that she gravitated to. She doesn't see them necessarily the way I would see them or the way somebody else might see them. What she pulled from this Corot is not exactly what I would have necessarily focused on. I love the fact that I guess it was in the conversation we had with her on the video, where she talked about drawing leaves, and what she really loved was the stem, because it was the line. And the same thing is true in the mirror, where she saw the line in the circle. I mean, I just think that her eye is so wonderful, and the way she sees the world, and how she then can translate that into the objects that she creates is what makes her one of a kind and so unique, and it's what nobody else can do. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the way that Betty is pulling something out of that which no one has ever seen before. Ellen, did you have anything to add to that?
Well, that story that Betty told us, I remember Fred and Betty and I were sitting together, and we asked her, well, what inspired you to make jewelry? And she was really quite cranky with us. She was like, that's not how art works. You don't suddenly get an inspiration and start to make jewelry. It was just, you make things already, like, leave me alone. And then she sort of hesitated, and she goes, well, actually, now that I think of it, I was an apprentice for a jewelry maker in Baltimore, and this jewelry maker was creating pins based on dogwood flowers, which very famous in Baltimore. And Betty realized at a certain point that she didn't like the flowers. She just wanted to make the stems, and that was what brought her into this drawing in metal and making her own jewelry that didn't have the dumb dogwood thing in it, that was curving lines of metal. And it all started then. She was inspired.
That's really wonderful. Thank you. And I'm looking at the time here, and I know we're going to hand it over to the audience, but also ask Betty to come up onto the stage so that she can actually correct everything that we've said, because I'm sure it was a gross misrepresentation, and Betty will set us right. So,
and here she is, Betty Cooke.
Yay!
I'm afraid to say anything.
Welcome, Betty. And I'm going to ask for questions from the audience, and I'm going to ask very nicely if you would mind raising your hand, but also waiting for the microphone to get to you, because we really won't be able to hear you otherwise. And there are staff members dotted around the auditorium who will come to you if you want to raise your hand and ask a question. I see a lady with her hand up way in the back there, and a microphone is on its way to you. So please go ahead.
Well, I have to admit that anytime I see beautiful things, I get greedy and envious, and I want to have them. So my question is, all those beautiful pins, necklaces, bracelets, and that we have seen, and I have been to see the exhibit, are those available still? Are those for purchase?
I love that question, because I was making a big fuss about how we must arm all of our front of house staff with Betty's address. But Betty, what's your response to that?
Well, I don't care to make them all again because of volume. But some of them, not many of them are available, because most of them are one of a kind, and I would not make anything that I did special for somebody. But there have been pieces, don't forget this was all these years, there are pieces like a disc earring, we call it, which is a circle on a post, and another disc we call double disc. Well, I can't tell you how many of those it's become. Just everybody has to have one of those earrings. So we still don't mass produce these. We make, somebody buys 4, we would get 1, and we don't have a factory, but there's something like a double disc or a certain bracelet or this ring that everybody seems to like. So I really do want my jewelry to be liked and to be worn. And some of it's very fine and very costly because of what's in it or because of my work in it. And some are very casual and simple because I think it should be seen and worn and enjoyed. And I can't get over how many people I feel very close to because they have a piece that was a graduation present, whatever it may be, all the sentimental parts to jewelry. But I feel all that too. And so I have to thank all the customers who come in and buy a little pin and then 40 years later, the granddaughter comes in and asks how to wear it. But so that's been very important to me, especially with this exhibition, because you know, jewelers have a problem when they start, not a problem, a decision to go gallery oriented or to do whatever they want to do. You can do whatever you want to do if you have to earn a living. But I chose a way to have some pieces that people can have at a reasonable price. And I don't want to talk about price because that gets difficult. But I think that's why I do it, not for people. I mean, everybody can't come in and ask me to copy a design. That does happen. I'm the designer of it. So if you order something, the design, my ideas and your ideas go together, and it comes out right. I don't think I've ever sold a piece that, well, maybe there have been 3 pieces in, 80 years or something, that I like. And I like jewelry and anything creative because you get an idea which is way out there, and you have to make it a reality someplace along the line. And you reach a point, you work and work, and all these things come together, and all of a sudden you can say, I like that, or that's it. That's what this is meant to be. And that's part of the excitement of jewelry or anything, cooking, food. And once you do a meal that you think is a wonderful meal, you get all excited about it. And that's part of the pleasure of being an artist in any way, I think. Does that answer your question?
And come visit the Store Ltd at the Village of Cross Keys.
There's still some wonderful pieces.
Some of it, not some of it, but some more of it is available.
Yeah, and Betty, actually, you made a piece especially for the show, and it's the most recent piece in the Star section upstairs. So
I think so. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So still making new things in dialogue with the past, which is wonderful. I wonder if there are any other questions. Yes, the lady here in the white blouse.
Okay, so your love of nature is what I'm intrigued by, because you grew up in Baltimore City, and I know you've influenced our family and many families to love nature. So when did that start? Why isn't it all brick and, it's stone, but where did you come to love of birds and nature?
Because I love the earth. And I love all of nature. I mean, we know it's all beautiful, it's all wonderful, it's amazing, and it's beyond us. I love the clouds, I love trees, I love the fish. I love whatever they're finding out in their DNA. I mean, all these things are amazing. I think just amazing. Not that I can't do any of them, but I can express the fact that I really love this, whatever it is. Does that answer why didn't it come an environmentalist maybe, or a scientist? Because I don't have that skill, and I can make things, and so I used it in that way. If that answers you. I'm not good at answering questions. Okay.
That was great, thank you. Yeah, do we have another question here, same row as before?
Based on your lifetime of experience being a jewelry artist, knowing what you know now and then looking back, do you have any advice or reflections on your artistic practice specifically as a jewelry artist for other new or emerging jewelry artists?
Other artists or other people?
Advice for new.
I guess what we all know is you must love it, or don't do it, unless you have to, and it's part of your job. But you have to I used to tell my students, make sure you only sell, or make sure you keep only what you like, because with metal, 50 years from now, somebody's going to come back and embarrass you. So you really have to. Does that make sense? Make sense to somebody? But you really do have to love it, because you've done it. It's right in front of you, And it can be ugly, and if you want to keep it because you also love ugliness, do you know what I mean? Some people love things that are ugly. That's okay. Keep making ugly things. But and there's a lot of that around. But and a lot of it gets sold. So you can do that. Just try to do something ugly sometime and think, oh, well, hey, somebody's going to come up and like it. That's the real problem. And they'll think it's ugly. Taste is a big part of it. And I want to say again, as far as we call this art jewelry, or I call it, I think everybody does now, because someone can have a piece of jewelry on, it is not like mine, but I would see it and I would think it was wonderful because I realize it has a look that is a person's signature. And they come up to me, people come up to me in China and all over the place and say, oh, you have one of Betty Cooke? You know? And she will have on something that I think I've never seen before. And she said, well, I make this. And if you feel like you're related to all the people that understand the difference between a handmade piece or a well-designed piece and another piece that might be not well-designed, but another piece that, shall we say, fashion jewelry, and there's a lot of it that's gorgeous, but oh, there's so much that is not. So I guess I'm saying all of you who have bought my jewelry, you're in a club that's called art jewelry, and you will recognize all the new jewelers that are producing beautiful things, and all the galleries that have beautiful things.
Thank you. I think we're going to take one more question and then turn it back over to Julia for closing remarks.
How was your, what was your vision coming into this show and working with these two curators? You must have had some idea what you wanted, and how was it working with the folks? To everything from you have some beautiful paint colors on the wall to how it's described. So how was your process getting to this point today? Thank you.
Well, it was, I've been in other shows, but I've been very involved with my husband and so forth in other shows. And of course you have a vision, and I think this is very close to my vision. And we talked to Sam, of course, and I was available to all kinds of computer plans and so forth. So I had a good idea of what the space was like, because once I've been in it, but the space was organized a different way. But, oh, I'm going to get on the subject here. It's very hard for one person to do I think, a complete show on the other person without the other person involved. And we were involved. There were several meetings, and I think the ideas were good. But you come down to details, well, you have to accept one person's idea and your idea, because they're both good, but they just may deviate a little bit. And so you're responsible to accept. I hope that makes sense, because I've never worked with
It was definitely a dialogue. We can definitely say that.
What?
Jo says it was a dialogue.
It was a dialogue, but in the middle of it, I would want to know, do you like this color? And I'd have to go through a computer to find out which. I think it was exciting to work with a group, and my goodness, they all were wonderful. Everybody had their position, and it was wonderful. And I think the show is wonderful. I must say that the space is a lot different than I imagined, which I like. I mean, it's a different space, and it's a wonderful space. And I think it's time for me to say how wonderful I think it is. And again, all the staff, and on the drawings that I would get, they would show showcases, a little black line that goes around and says showcase. And here are these gorgeous showcases. I said to somebody, Walters has to have beautiful cases, and they're exceptional. So make sure you see every showcase along with the jewelry, because they too are beautiful. And I've gotten a lot of input through with Jeannine and Julie has been very nice to me. Because I think it's wonderful you're doing this, I really do. And I hope it influences a lot of people and a lot of museums that you pick up on some good work that's being done and some good people. There are a lot of good people out there that deserve a lot of credit, I think, in this way. But I am totally honored. I'm sort of really can't believe it all, and I love everything that was said. And at this point, I love everybody that has my jewelry.
Betty, it really is an honor to be here celebrating you, so thank you. She is incredibly patient, and I will say that she didn't win all of that dialogue all the time. So she was very graceful, and in making me, sometimes I had to say, Betty, no, we're not going to do that. And she was an amazing, she always came back and said, thank you very much. I don't agree, but we're going to move on. So you're very generous. But that was my favorite part of it, was saying to her, Betty, this is not your show. This is a show about you. We want to do something new. And she always would look at me a little bit skeptically about that. So this is your show, Betty. Thank you so much. And in fact, yesterday at the preview, we did realize, all of us, that this exhibition, it hasn't just taken a village to get us here, but actually an entire metropolis to get us here. And Betty has been at the center tirelessly of all of that work. And I would like to thank all of our panelists once again, each of you once again, and frankly, all of the incredible staff members, none of whom are here today because of COVID, especially our interim staff member, Jeannine Falino, and also the person whose name you've heard a couple of times, Sam Mara Candido. Sam is our new exhibition designer. She's done a couple of shows for us, but this one has been a special treat for her to do. And Sam and Jeannine and the other curators, Jo among them, came together to create what I will call the perfect setting, a little bit of jewelry humor there, the perfect setting for Betty's work. Betty, your work is the diamond in that setting. So thank you. I also would like to thank our exhibition sponsors again, PNC, the Walters Women's Committee Legacy Fund, Lenore G. Tawney Foundation, Hildy Voss Eliasberg Fund for Exhibitions, Joni and Bob Ottenritter, Judy and Peter Van Dyke, Harvey and Joyce Noyes, and MICA. The exhibition is open, and the beautiful book accompanying it is available in our store. And please stop by on your way out. I believe that all of you get a discount because you are supporters and lenders to the show. Finally, Betty has asked me, and I hope it's still okay, to take a minute and close this event, this wonderful, wonderful celebration, with her own thanks. So I will end in Betty's words. So I want to thank you, Betty, before I read your thanks. Thank you. So these are in the exhibition as well, but I would like to read what she came up with to put in the exhibition. This retrospective exhibition features works from my first days as a designer to things I have made recently. Many objects have been generously lent by private collectors, and I thank them for parting with their jewelry in order to make this exhibition possible. In addition to these collectors, I am deeply grateful for all of the good people who have been part of my work: customers, clients, organizations, craftspeople, staff, family, and friends. Now I'm honored by and grateful to the Walters Art Museum, its staff, and Jeannine Falino, our guest curator of the show and author of the accompanying publication. Most of all, and especially, I deeply miss my husband, who was my partner and by my side in the journey of my life, Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Betty.